I just got back from watching Stephen King, The Long Walk. You know, going into this movie, I had pretty high expectations of this film because from what I was seeing in the trailers, damn, it just looked so interesting and dystopian, and it really caught my attention. Like this was one of those films that I was really looking forward to go see. So is The Long Walk worth your time? Is it worth you going out of your way to go see it? Yes. This movie was executed so well. It dives straight into it. Spoilers, if you don't want to get it spoiled, and you still haven't seen it, go watch it. It's worth your time and go do that. You've been warned now. This movie takes place in the 1970s after a war, and there is an epidemic of laziness going on, which is why they have the long walk. Now, this is basically just a walking contest of seeing who has work ethic and who is the strongest soldier, or yada yada do, whatever the fuck. It's just, that's all you pretty much need to know about it. Starting this movie off, we have our main character, Ray. And Ray is one hell of a character, in my opinion, because we see his development, and throughout the course of the movie, you really do feel his emotions and his frustrations and his fears. You really do feel like you are living in Ray's perspective throughout this film. It starts off with him getting dropped off to the long walk by his mother, just straight to it. There is no useless backstory, filler, garbage, mumbo jumbo shit. No, it's just straight into it. And I wish more movies would do this. The country. So he gets dropped off by his mom, and his mom is worried that, she's not going to see her son anymore because it is a very dangerous contest. Basically, the winner is promised a life change of riches, and they're granted a wish, and they basically change, their entire life and their family's lives, for the greater good. So she has a horrible goodbye to her son. She lets him go, and then she comes running back at him after leaving him for just 1 second, and she just doesn't want her son to go, which eventually she lets him go, and that's where the movie begins. Now Ray meets a guy named Pete, and Pete is an absolute fucking unit. Honestly, I think he was my favorite character throughout the film. Pete was just a fucking unit, bro. This guy just wasn't slowing down throughout the entire thing, and I'm gonna get into that. We're then introduced to a couple other characters. So we have Olsen, who I will refer to as the one guy who pretty much was the only kid that was married to somebody. He had a wife, and you wouldn't have expected this guy to have a wife, how young he looked. You have another kid who is he's like a background character, but he does play a critical part into the movie. He's probably the youngest one. He's 18 years old. He looks like the absolute youngest one, and out of the group. Then you have a guy named Stebbins who looks like to be really fit. Everybody there is just telling him, "Hey Stebbins, what you getting so unfit for? Like, what are you, a gym freak?" He's just very rude and shit like that. But he's you could tell he is confident in his ability to probably win this thing. Then you have Arthur Baker. They call him Art in the movie for short. Now Arthur was a very well written character in my opinion, and the way how they killed him off was just honestly so sad. I'm gonna get into that. So after about 50 miles, the youngest one in the group catches a cramp on his leg, and it's slowing him down because you have to maintain a certain pace while you're walking throughout this contest of 3 miles per hour. Now after he catches this cramp, he gets warned, and then he proceeds to walk further. Ray comes back for him, tells him, "Hey man, it's gonna be okay, don't slow down, keep walking." As he's helping him, he's limping and stuff, but he's slowing down on his own, and it's clear that he just can't walk anymore. Now Ray just goes back to the front, and he lets him be because he just gives up on his own, and they shoot him. The first death of this movie was gruesome, straight to the face, and you literally seen the bullet go through his mouth. It was gruesome. About 75 miles in, there's another kid who had it the absolute worst. This kid had to take a shit, and I'm not gonna lie, I did laugh because that is not bro's fault. I couldn't even fucking imagine, out of all things that could have happened to you, he didn't trip, he didn't get tired, he didn't get hungry or sleep deprived or anything. No, he had to take a shit, bro. and he's literally shitting as he's walking, so he's taking mini breaks. He gets a warning the first time, and then he continues walking, and then he still has to go because he didn't let it all out the first time, so he stops again to take, to finish his shit, but it's not enough, so now boom, second warning's gone. He proceeds again, he does it again, and then he just gets shot. That shit, I couldn't even fucking imagine, you dying. Like, bro, he had the worst death out of everybody. Now, there's another person who had a seizure, and that one was actually crazy. Like, I couldn't even believe that they didn't even, like, hesitate to kill him. They just seen him on the floor. He was, like, oozing out of his mouth, and they put him to sleep. Like that. So coming into the nighttime, they are going across a hill, and it is a pretty steep uphill, and the sergeant is literally yelling at them, telling them this is going to be the last time, this is going to be your last night, for some of you guys. And man, that motherfucker wasn't lying. People are struggling to maintain speeds. They've already got more than 2 warnings. They're getting shot left and right. People are dropping like fucking flies, and Ray is looking like he's about to slow down. He's fainting, and he's like falling in and out of sleep, and he's drowsy, and he's so exhausted. And then Pete comes out of nowhere, and he saves him. He lifts him up, and he just keeps him walking by his side at the same pace. And there's just so much shit going on, because while this is happening, he literally has an M16 pointed to his head, and Ray's just telling, there was this other guy who was telling Ray, don't look back, you got a fucking gun at your head. He looks back, and then he had a gun at his head, and it was just so fucking insane, just seeing them go up that uphill. That shit was like, that was the literal nightmare, worst thing that could happen to them, because they had to keep walking, and now they got to go on an uphill. Like, oh my God, like, damn. We have this character named Gary. Now, Gary is more of an outsider. He is like, he's very, like, I wouldn't say emo, but like, he does have a really, really big problem fitting in, and you could tell that he has some sort of like mental issues and stuff, which is why he actually does take his own life, but I'm gonna get into that. So there was this other kid that he was just insulting and throwing like mama jokes at him and shit, and like he got the kid worked up to like swing at him, and he fucking missed 3 times, and every time he fucking missed, he caught a warning. So he literally caught 3 L's back to back, and then he just got fucking blasted on the pavement. And this is when Pete keeps calling him a killer and stuff, and Gary doesn't take it the right way, because he technically didn't put his hands on him or whatever, like the kid did that to himself. That's what he says. But this gets to Gary, and after about 200, or maybe, no, I'd say about like 250 miles in, like on the 5th day, that's when he just feels like he can't take enough. So, he's still living with this guilt of feeling like he killed that kid, and he takes his own life. And what's more tragic about it is that he like stabs himself in the throat, and he doesn't die instantly. He's still conscious while he's bleeding out, and then he gets shot afterwards. I think that's just like such a horrible way to die. Like, some of the deaths in this movie were just so fucking gruesome, man. Like, if you're squeamish at all, I probably wouldn't recommend you go watch this. But from a person who just loves like horror films and stuff, and just seeing like people die, and just, I don't know, I got a fucked up head sometimes. Like, when I see shit on TV, like, I don't know why. I guess just watching too much Walking Dead, I have no idea. But yeah, some of the deaths in this movie really were gruesome, man. So coming up on 300 miles, this was one of the most saddest deaths. Like, just Arthur, man, his death was so sad, because so Olsen, the kid who's married, and he's the only one that's married throughout the group, he's slowing down, and he's almost like in a trance state. Like, he's like, he doesn't even know that he's walking. He's just walking and walking, and he's not eating, and he's already like, pooped on himself and everything, because that's all he can do. Like, he has to keep walking to survive. And that's when somebody in the group from behind Ray tells Pete, hey man, like, look at Olsen. He doesn't look good. He's already pooped himself, and he looks like he's about to give up any minute now. So then, which he does, he just stops walking, and then he gets shot, and then he collapses on the floor. Arthur goes back to save him, and Ray's telling him, "What are you doing? What are you doing?" And he goes running back for Arthur because he's telling him he's dead already. He's already been shot. Just let him die. Go ahead. Just let him die. And Arthur basically almost kills himself in the process of trying to save him. And Ray almost gets himself killed because they got the guns pointed at him and they look like they're about to blast him. And then, he manages to get him back in the group. And then the next day, Arthur, he actually, he looks like he's given up. He has a nosebleed that's not stopping after like 40 more miles. So they're like 350 miles in. I freaking lost count. They're about 300 miles in. And then, so after which he has this nosebleed that just doesn't stop. And it's really, really messing him up. And he takes off his dog tag and he gives it to Ray. And he tells him, give this to my grandmother, because he feels like he's not going to make it. And he makes that promise to him. And after he does that, he just stops walking and yeah, he dies. Now we're in the top 3. So it's Peter, Stebbins, and Ray. And after they're walking, we actually do learn that Stebbins is sick and he feels like he can't proceed any longer. And he actually admits to Peter and Ray that the sergeant, the person who's like in charge of this whole operation thing, the contest, is actually his father. And this catches Ray off guard completely because that same sergeant was the one that killed his father in a flashback. And it was just crazy to see that because he obviously didn't have any sympathy for him because of that. But the fact that earlier in the movie, Ray mentioned that after he won the contest, he said that he wasn't going to do it for money or whatnot. He just wanted to, grant his wish of getting a rifle and then shooting the sergeant right in his face. Peter tells him that's not the right thing to do. And, you need to get back to your mother because you actually have someone to get back to. He just makes him keep his humanity intact because Ray is sounding like somebody evil and not like himself. You learn a lot about somebody when you guys are literally on life and death and you guys are just walking forever. This is going to be the last group of people that you meet and, you possibly see. So they were telling each other's deepest secrets and stuff, So after Stebbins tells them everything and he lore dumps, that's when he stops walking and he tells them, you guys are going to make it. And then he gets blasted. So Stebbins is out. Now we're in the top 2. And it's Ray and Peter. And this moment right here is what it comes down to. They are like 350 miles in. And man, this was what I didn't want to see because you really do get attached to these characters because the way how they bonded throughout the entire movie, you just want them all to win, but you just know it's not going to happen because there can only be one winner. So as they're walking, Peter comes to a stop and Ray comes back to him and he's telling him, "What are you doing, man? What are you doing?" Peter's taking a kneel and he's just giving up. He's forfeited and he just wants Ray to win so he could get back to his mother. And man, me watching that, I was just like, no, please don't. And then, so he comes back for him and then he lifts him up and he tells him, "Dude, we're going to make it out together, man." But you just know that's not going to happen. And, so as they're walking together, Ray takes a step back and the whole time that he takes that step back, Peter's walking and talking to himself and he thinks that Ray's right next to him, but then he looks back and he's already left in the dust. And he's already on his final warning. That was just so fucking heartbreaking to see. Peter ends up winning and he basically fulfills Ray's wish and he kills the sergeant. And I'm not going to lie, I feel like this movie couldn't have ended in no better way. And he said the magic words, "This is for Ray." So, yeah. I'm not gonna lie, this movie was great, man. It was definitely solid, definitely worth a watch. So, yeah, that's what I have to say about it. It really is an amazing movie. I'm not gonna lie, the shit almost made me tear up at the end. It really was worth the wait. But that's gonna be enough for me. If you guys liked the video, leave a like, and if you want to support me, subscribe to the channel. It's free, it don't cost you nothing, and yada yada do. I'm gonna go take a shit, and not get blasted in the head. So I will catch you guys later. Peace.